From 1955 to 1975, war waged through the dense jungles of Vietnam over the threats of communism. And for many, this is believed to be the first defeat for Americans in war, but I know Americans won't agree with that. So I'm not here to debate, but let me tell you some of the horrors that happened during the Vietnam War. I'm your host Andrew, and here are your top 10 scary Vietnam War facts. At our number 10 spot, we have booby traps. This war was infamous for Vietnam's use of guerrilla warfare on the US troops, but this came largely due to the fact that Americans invaded, locked, and loaded. Despite what many believe, the US outgunned and outmanned the communists, so they needed to find other ways to fight them. And their response was these intricate booby traps. These things were devastating, and just by the looks of it, I understand why US troops' morales were dropped completely down the drain after running into these. The jungle terrain was hard enough having to deal with hiding soldiers and underground tunnels, but imagine walking and running into some of these traps. Some include the punji sticks, which were these sharpened bamboo coated in either poison, feces, or even urine, which could cause immediate infection if stabbed. Another one is the cartridge trap. When soldiers stepped on this trap, a nail acting as a firing pin shoots bullets straight up at the victim. We also have the mace, which is a tripwire trap that triggers a 40-pound spiked ball that swings from a tree and gets stuck onto its victims. These were only a small list of the booby traps contained within these dense jungles. I feel like I should make a top 10 on this, but if you guys are interested to see, here are some other traps. Terrifying, right? At number 9 spot, we have Operation Wandering Soul. The sounds coming from the Vietnam War definitely ranks one of the highest in terms of pure horror. With the Viet Cong hiding in the dense jungles, nowhere to be seen, Americans knew that they needed to bring their morale down without the use of firearms. So in the middle of the night, they would commence Operation Wandering Soul. This is a way for Americans to demoralize the Viet Cong by playing eerie sounds and altered voices on speakers. These sounds were supposed to mimic a wandering soul because in Vietnamese culture, if a proper burial is not done, the soul of the deceased will wander the earth as a malevolent spirit. And during the Vietnam War, many soldiers didn't get a proper burial. The most famous of their recordings was named Ghost Tape Number 10, and the best way to explain it is just to play it for you guys. At number 8 spot, we have Agent Orange. With the jungle being an issue for American soldiers, they decided to use a controversial weapon known as Agent Orange. I warn you, this one is pretty cool. Agent Orange was a herbicide mixture which contained a dangerous chemical known as dioxin. For those who don't know, dioxin is extremely toxic and can cause skin lesions, developmental problems, immune system damage, and can cause cancer. They estimate that around 3 million Vietnamese people had been affected by Agent Orange during the war, with a recorded of up to 150,000 children born with serious birth defects due to this chemical. Other than the lives this chemical took, the worst part about this was that the dioxin could remain in the soils for decades. This has caused Agent Orange to have detrimental effects to this day. After seeing its destructive power, the US decided to ban Agent Orange in 1971. They took it to the Johnston Atoll and destroyed the last one in 1978. At our number 7 spot, we have My Lai Massacre. This could possibly be one of America's worst war crimes they have ever committed, so it's pretty dark, just for the warning. On March 16, 1968, a platoon of US soldiers brutally massacred a total up to 347 unarmed civilians at My Lai. They were told inside that Viet Cong were in the area, but when they arrived there, they weren't there. Despite no sign of hostility, Lieutenant William Calley gave the orders for them to open fire on the villagers. The victims included men, women, children, and even infants. After they violated and mutilated the villagers, they went on to burn the village along with slaughtering all of their livestock. It was a complete war crime. It wasn't until an army pilot named Hugh Thompson was walking when he noticed bodies and bodies of civilians as he approached the gunfire. But as he approached the gunfire, he noticed that it was his own comrade shooting. In a change of events, Hugh gave them the orders to stop or he would open fire on them. A total of 26 soldiers were charged with criminal offenses, but only William Calley would be convicted and found guilty of taking the lives of 22 villagers. He was given a life sentence. This event will remain a huge stain on the US military for a long time. At a number 6 spot, we have the Ace of Spades. Another example of psychological warfare done by the US was the Ace of Spades. And yes, I'm talking about the playing card. So for background info, the US Airborne Division used to put an Ace of Spades on their helmet for good luck. Fast forward to the Vietnam War, and the US soldiers made it a tradition to leave an Ace of Spades on the helmets of deceased Vietnamese soldiers. Soon the card would be associated with death to both the Vietnamese and the Americans. Eventually, as more Viet Cong saw this happening, their morale would go down, and the Americans knew this. So Charlie Company asked the US playing card company to supply them with crates filled with the Ace of Spades cards, which were labeled as Bicycle Secret Weapon upon arrival. And they used all these cards and they dropped them all over Vietnam Vietnamese villages and jungles to frighten them. The Americans would continue to use this to taunt them by keeping it on their helmet as an anti-peace sign. This card would be later known as the death card. Right in the hump of our list we have napalm. The Vietnam War had its fair share of destructive weapons, but nothing comes close to napalm, which would have been the worst weapon used in a war since the atomic bomb. Napalm, in simple terms, is basically liquid fire or a firebomb fuel gel mixture. It would often have a gelling powder composed of naphthalene and palmitate mixed with gasoline to form a sticky combustible substance. Its sticky nature is the reason why it was so devastating when it released. The substance would stick onto its victims all while burning them alive, or at least causing 4th or 5th degree burns. The area napalm can cover up to 2,500 square yards, which would be completely engulfed in fire. The reason for these bombs in the first place was to support ground troops and to demoralize the enemy. Burning alive has got to be one of the worst ways to go, and seeing this fire would literally be seeing hell on earth. It eventually got banned in 1980 by the United Nations and listed as a war crime. Glad to know this one is gone, but the fact we got to see its powers is terrifying for the future. At number 4 spot, we have the AK-47 over the M16. During the war, American troops would abandon their American-owned M16 assault rifles to use the Viet Cong's AK-47 instead. This was a reason because the M16 was just not as reliable as the AK-47. First, the US changed their ammunition sizes without notifying, and it caused a lot of these guns to jam at pretty random times, which you could imagine would be pretty inconvenient in a gunfight. Second, the M16 couldn't be handled in jungle terrain. It would regularly jam when mud seeped into the gun. I mean, let's compare the two. The AK-47 is a 7.62mm gas-operated assault rifle with the capability to shoot up to 600 rounds per minute. It's claimed to be the most powerful due to the fact it doesn't break or even jam or even overheat. I mean, I don't even need to mention the M16, it has nothing compared to the AK-47. At number 3 spot, we have the Kuchi tunnels. Deep inside the jungles were not only booby traps, but a system of underground tunnels for the Viet Cong to hide and move around unnoticed. These were known as the Kuchi tunnels. These were a network of underground tunnels stretching more than 124 miles long. Although these tunnels were known internationally from the Vietnam War, Vietnamese did this well before, back in the 1940s during the War for Independence from the French. However, it wasn't until the Vietnam War where the tunnels would be dug for miles, with reports saying that the tunnels travel from the outskirts of Saigon all the way to the Cambodian border. These tunnels were by far anywhere near safe. Not only did you have to worry about the tunnels collapsing due to the poor construction of it, there would be snakes and scorpions and other booby traps inside of these tunnels. It's said that 45,000 Vietnamese men and women passed away defending these tunnels during the war. At number 2 spot, we have the massacre at Hue. Hue was one of the longest and bloodiest bouts during the Vietnam War, lasting a total of 26 days. During that time, up to 6,000 civilians and prisoners of war were abused, tortured, and executed at random. The Viet Cong believed this to be a cleansing of the area to anyone who opposed the rule and those who were invading their country. This battle was part of the Tet Offensive, which is when North Vietnam launched a grand-scale assault on every city in South Vietnam. The Viet Congs had a total of 80,000 troops ready before this assault, and despite the Americans knowing about this prior, they were still caught off guard. At a number 1 spot, we have Welcome with Flowers. The earliest Americans participating in the Vietnam War worked for the Office of Strategic Services, which served as the CIA's forerunner. As early as 1954, they were assisting the French and Southern governments of Saigon. Marines made their first official ground landing in Da Nang in 1965, beginning the first formal ground operation. Instead of a D-Day invasion, local women and flowers were welcomed to the troops. This would forever be eerie because of what happened following this event. The Vietnam War was brutal for both sides, and this side of friendliness is so uncharacteristic of the time. Who knows, the Vietnamese girls who put the flowers on the US soldiers could have been the future victims of their firearms, making this one the top of our list. Well, these are the top 10 scary Vietnam War facts. What do you guys think about this list? I'm your host Andrew, and I hope you guys have a scary day.